Hi, this is Howard Cooper, and before we jump into this podcast interview, I just wanted to share that I've been lucky enough over the last couple of years to have interviewed a bunch of other leading therapists and agents of change, really exploring their take on everything rapid change related. What you're about to see was recorded a little while ago, but it still holds tremendous value if you're someone that wants to learn about how to help people make quick behavioural shifts. So I hope you enjoy, and to make sure you don't miss any of the new releases, then take action and click that subscribe button, and then you'll be kept in the loop when any new episodes come out. Welcome to the Rapid Change Matters podcast. My name is Howard Cooper, and for over 14 years now, I've been fascinated with helping people to create personal change quickly. But I still come across many who believe that lasting personal change has to take a long time, consisting of reliving traumas or deep psychological analysis, or simply that flawed notion that understanding why you have a problem will somehow make it go away. I'm on a mission to get people who work therapeutically with others to shift their thinking and realise that these beliefs are not written in stone. Rapid change can happen. So, to help you open up to what's possible, I'm interviewing top therapists and agents of change who are out there getting real results with real people really quickly. Before we get to the interview, I just wanted to let you know that I've written a quick-to-read, downloadable PDF on 5 strategies to amplify your client's response, with some great tips on getting your therapeutic suggestions to really sizzle. You can download this for free from rapidchange.works, where you can also find all the information about this episode and episodes still to come. Now, over to the interview. Now, my guest today is Phil Jeremiah. Phil has worked extensively with Frank Farrelly, the father of provocative therapy, and since then he's updated and developed this work to create his own unique methodologies, promoting the very serious use of humour to bring about change. He also has a background in psychotherapy, clinical hypnosis, brief strategic therapy, NLP, EFT, EMDR, CBT, life coaching, as well as extensive training in the fields of adult psychiatry and clinical risk assessments. Is there anything this guy hasn't done? Additionally, a couple of weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to attend a live workshop with Phil, so I got to see this man work his magic. And so it gives me great pleasure to welcome him today to the show. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you very much, Howard. Pleasure.
I'm hoping you can tell everyone at home a little bit about yourself, what you do, and really how you got started.
Well, I started out in the midst of time down in Wales when I worked in the steelworks as a boy, and I noticed then that there was a lot of humour. There was sometimes gentle teasing going on. Sometimes some people would get a little bit over the top with the teasing, but there was always somebody to rein them in and say, that's enough. So the teasing, I think, was, it helped people, grow in response to, life in general. Then I sort of, I suppose, morphed into working in hospitals. I'd spent a lot of time as a child in hospital in Wales, and funnily enough, I went back to the same hospital I worked in, which I think the psychodynamic crowd would find very interesting. So I sort of worked in operating theatres then, trained as a technician. So it was, working with people, that was the start of it, even though most of the time the people were unconscious. But also there was a lot of humour in the theatres, never at the patient's expense, whereupon, again, it was a buffer, because you were dealing with horrendous situations, literally, and people died sometimes. So you couldn't say, well, I can't handle this, I need to leave the theatre, I'll see you all tomorrow if I'm feeling, you had to deal with it. It was tough going, but I'm sure, and I know a lot of research is pointing at humour, creates it's almost like a fielder, and it's a buffer, and there's a sharing of what's going on in those pretty hairy situations. I then again my sort of morphing continued then, whereupon I did did a brief spell in psychiatric nursing. Unfortunately, had a serious leg break and didn't complete the training. So then I went back into, I thought, well, the psychiatric social worker's got an interesting job. So I trained, went back to uni, and worked for nearly 25 years as a mental health, senior mental health practitioner. But once again, always developing in-house training, looking at what was working. I remember talking about mindfulness 20-odd years ago, and it was poo-pooed a little bit, a little bit woolly, new age, hippie, candles burning. But of course now it's mainstream and it's part of the nice guidelines as well. So perhaps you can call me a futurist. I don't know, but so there's been a combination, but it was always going way back in the midst of time, working with people, which I probably picked, learned that sort of stuff when I was a child in hospital for a long time with a very serious illness. But looking at, the care that was going on and the care that I had off the nurses. So lots of roots into my, I suppose, continual, development of what I'm doing. These days it's neuroscience is a fascinating area as well, because I like to take bits of neuroscience and give it to clients and say, right, this is what's going on. And the explanation is so powerful, when you're going to do some change work, because they know that the brain can change. And that's the wonderful thing about neuroscience, brain cells that fire together, wire together, neuroplasticity. You start talking to clients about that stuff and they love it. They really do.
Because one of the things I really enjoyed about the workshop when I attended was you kept sort of dropping in real elements of concrete neuroscience.
Oh yeah.
And you talked about gamma spikes.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting in relation to change work.
Yeah. This is the I suppose the eureka moment. There is a neuroscientific basis for it, and there's many ways to reach that, that gamma spike. Some neuroscientists talk about you have to approach the project, the problem, in a very intense way. You go at it hammer and tongs, then you leave it. Then you may get that eureka moment, that aha moment. It might be hours later, sometimes it could be days later. And I suppose we've all experienced that, where we've been really having a go at something and think, I'm not getting there at the moment, and then sometimes we leave it, and all of a sudden, ping, in it comes. And if you look at lots of acts of creativity, Kessler's work, I love Kessler's work in his book Active Creativity. He goes into great detail about this, how people made breakthroughs over the years, how people played around as well and had fun with stuff. And I think that's what's been missing in, I suppose, psychotherapy in general and in change work. And again, lots of good neuroscientific research to back it up. When we're playing around, when we're having fun, then, we got more chance of solving problems.
So would you argue that, I don't know whether argue is the right word, but would you...
Be careful, Howard. Don't start an argument
absolutely,
with me.
Yeah, we'll start as we mean to go on, eh? Would you agree with the idea that a lot of people have difficulties or issues or problems, or that they are perpetuated because in essence we take them too seriously?
Well, yeah, I think it's about pointing out to people. I always point out to people that they have a choice, and they can actually laugh at their issue, their problem, their concern, what's going on. They can laugh at it. We're not on about laughing at them. We're not on about not taking them seriously, because there's a fine line. But we're on about, right, you've got a choice. And if I bring up examples of what Viktor Frankl was doing in Auschwitz and other, death camps, they go, all right, then, yeah, I can do this. It's almost like you have to give people permission, because I think we are conditioned by all the parameters into, we've got to be serious about things, we've got to wear the mask of seriousness, and that's the only way through. It's the only way to learn, it's the only way we can come through this, and it's just not true. But you have to get people, on side and say, right, you have a choice, you can laugh at this, and we do. I think at the workshop, when I give the example of the whistle blowing at my father's funeral, that was a fine line, really. Shall I tell you telling the story. So
yeah. Please fill everyone in, because it was a really interesting story.
It was something. My dad was a joker. He joked his way through the Second World War. He joked his way. I worked with him for a short time in the steelworks. Always a joker. Always playing around. Almost like he was. I think the sixth member of the Marx Brothers. I'm sure of it. And he would sometimes, when he was down in his workingmen's club down in Wales, somebody was just about to take a drink, and he'd go up behind him with the referee's whistle and blow. And of course, people would judder, they would jump, usually tipping a little bit of their beer, and then there'd be a lot of cussing going on, but smiling and laughing, saying, bloody hell, what the hell's all that about? What's going on? So he blew this whistle. Of course, when he passed away, I got the whistle. Because I'm Phil Jeremiah IV. My dad was Phil Jeremiah III. I rarely use the title these days, of course. And my sister said, please don't blow that whistle at the funeral. And I said, well, Dad would have wanted me to blow the whistle. She said, no, Philip. And I knew when she said Philip, I was in trouble. Don't blow the whistle. So the funeral started, and, I was almost like split down the middle. There was part of me that was obviously grieving, sad, people crying in the church, and then the other part was saying, what about the whistle? What about the whistle? When are you going to blow the whistle? And I'm on the phone to myself, stop now. I had the whistle in my pocket, by the way. And then as we were coming out, his favourite song, Danny Boy, was playing, and I thought, I can't blow the whistle now, surely not when Danny Boy's playing. And then we got to the graveside, and I thought, I'm literally running out of time here. I'm never going to get to blow this whistle. And there we were at the graveside, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and all people putting the earth on the coffin. And as I was walking away, my cousin appeared. I hadn't seen him for 30-odd years. Lives in London. He just come straight up to me, and he didn't say, I'm sorry to hear about your loss and all this. He comes out, he said, that old whistle your dad had. And I went, wow, this is, a moment. Pulled it out of my pocket. I said, this one. He said, yeah, that's it. And I blew the whistle, and there was applause and laughter. But it was timing. It was all about the timing, whether it was a synchronicity, coincidence, or whatever. But for him just to come out and ask about the whistle, I thought that was really strange. But hey, I seized the moment, and even my sister was smiling, and she said that was absolutely wonderful, the way you blew the whistle, when she previously said don't blow the whistle. So it's all about the timing. It is about learning how to get the timing right, I think, when we use humour, because it's so powerful. And I think using humour in a serious way is a difference, I think, like I said at the workshop, between the light bulb and a laser beam. The photons are not in phase in a light bulb, they are in a laser beam, and they cut through steel. And I think humour can do that. It's absolutely amazing what it can do when we get people, ready to say, right, I can start. I've got a choice, and I can laugh at my issues and problems. So it's a wonderful thing, and I think a good example. Doing that.
It is indeed, and I think the use of humour within change work kind of goes against the stereotypical view that I think a lot of people, the general public, might have about therapy, and that they imagine therapy is, you come in, you lie on a couch, and you say, oh, I'm depressed, and then the counsellor goes, oh, that's really terrible, and how do you feel? It's awful, isn't it? And certainly the work that I saw you do, and through our conversations that we've had, prior to this, it comes across that this is absolutely not how a session is with you. Yeah. Well, it's interesting how people are conditioned. We've all been conditioned into this is how you act as a patient. This is what you should do, and this is how you should be. And then also the therapist, the coach, the counsellor, they are also conditioned in even the way they sit. They usually sit. I noticed this working in psychiatry. They'd sit in the same position, and I used to think, the counsellor, the therapist, is also stuck, and they're also stuck, in their bodies as well.
So I used to joke with some clients. I'd get up and move around and pretend to smoke a pipe like Sherlock Holmes, and this is a two-pipe problem, and that used to impress some people, thinking, oh, it's a two-pipe problem, must be important then. And again, pushing the order parameters and explaining to people that we can gain from disorder. We do need chaos to give birth to a dancing star, as Nietzsche said. We do need chaos. And when I do a bubble session, as you saw me doing in the workshop, where I explain, right, I'm in the bubble of possibility and anything goes, then I'm on the person's side. I'm the coach. I want the gold medal. I don't want the silver medal, don't want the bronze. I'm going after the gold medal, and I'm telling people that as well. So I will go at it hammer and tongs to have a go and get some sort of solution for them as well. And then I will use all sorts of methodologies to get that solution, and as you saw at the beginning there, I use what I call the percussion phase, where I'm introducing this, positive shock, off-the-wall ideas, different tonality of voice. I might even sing in a session, because that completely throws people. Why is this guy singing? I haven't said I will do anything and say anything to help. And what I'm doing there is creating almost like a kind of concussion where, the person is going into an altered state. Because we need to get, the brain is wonderful at keeping, the programs on a level of efficiency. And that's all right for some things. You don't want to change your level of efficiency in the morning when you get up, make your coffee, clean your teeth, have a shower. That's a good habit. But other habits we know we need to break. We need to challenge them. We need to shake them up. And then after part of this, what I call the PCD model, is the discussion then. Well, what happened? How did you feel? The discussion might be a week later as well. It might be a couple of weeks later. If I'm working with clients in Holland, then I'll talk to them on the phone or with Skype as well to say, how is it continuing to unfold for you as well? So, but you can clearly see this model working. But also, when I'm teaching people, I say, right, you've really got to go for it, because if you think about it, you've got to step outside yourself. As Einstein said, you won't solve a problem with the thinking that created it. So we have to be different, and then we've got a chance, because I know the person has got the capability to solve the problem. I'm just shaking things up a bit and supporting them, and then offering sometimes real research and real bits of philosophy to link in with what's going on when we do this crazy bubble session. It's like the theatre of the absurd, where we're going to really go for it. And I normally do a 20-minute bubble session, and really shake things up big time.
Well, because when I saw the bubble session, and just to let everyone know, on the workshop day, I think 4 bubble sessions, and each one was slightly different from the other, but all had this kind of frenetic theatre of the absurd about it. And this idea of percussion, concussion, discussion was very interesting. And I mean, for me, there was method in that freneticness.
Oh, there is. I'm not just there when I'm talking about percussion. Start the session off. All right, what's the problem? What's shaking down? What's going on? What's it all about? Then bursting into what's it all about, Alfie? Then that I'm preparing, the bubble to really shake things up and create. I need to shake that person out of the stuckness that they're in. These stuck patterns that they're in. And we know that positive shock is a wonderful thing sometimes, because it resets the governors of the system in the brain, and the person goes, "Oh, I feel different about this." We've probably, lots of us have experienced that in our lives. I say, "Well, and I do feel different. Something's happened. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I've almost gone through this phase transition." And you have there's that term from physics, bifurcation, where there's a splitting off, in the brain, and then we herald new behaviors. We feel different. There's no doubt about it.
I mean, it was fascinating seeing people, sit opposite you and talk, very briefly about a problem that they were coming with, or coming in with, and then watching them react, to, a bloke in front of them, singing and doing voices and coming out with absurd ideas. And, when you talk about, and you say to them again, well, what's the problem? And you literally watch their face go, I don't really know. It's like you can see visually there's some kind of pattern or something that's not firing anymore.
Well, that's
kind of
right. I think, neuroscientists have talked about this, where, if we're going to approach something, then we really do need to shake things up differently. And then, if we're going to retrieve that memory, we need to play around with it. We need to pull it. We need to, alter the chemical makeup. And when we introduce something new to a situation, then that's what's happening. And it's almost like we're contaminating it with a humour virus. We're tickling, the particular issue. And there's many issues that we can work with, because if you do it with, a twinkle in your eye, a big smiling heart, you can do it. Because most people, I don't think I've ever had anybody that said to me after a bubble session, I felt, really awful, and the things that you said, it's never happened. Because I know every session I prepare myself. I'm only as good as the last session, and I prepare myself right. Yeah, I've got to be centered. I've got to be centered, ready to do this piece of work as well. Because I know that it's got the the possibility. Anything's possible when we really go after something. Because I mean business as well. I want the best for people.
I mean, that certainly came across when I saw you doing stuff. And the other thing was, and it's interesting that you say that people don't take offence. I think there are a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you about, which is one, very much there were a couple of people I think who maybe had a more clinical psychotherapeutic background that had come along and saw, and I was fascinated by their reaction to some of the stuff that you did, which was I could never say that. That's kind of inappropriate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When I train people in this, obviously, we lay a good foundation. So if I'm, say, working with a doctor, I don't expect the doctor to start using, provocation, playful change, just out of the blue. We say, right, you're going to say to the patient, right, do you want to try something different? This is, the bubble of possibility as dreamed up by Phil Jeremiah IV. So we're going to go into the bubble, we're going to sit down. What I do get people to do on the training is write out your introduction script, so you can almost like design it, to meet your clinical background. But basically there's got to be elements in there that, we're going to go after this, we're going to shake things up, and I'm going to have a go at the problem. And at that moment, I'm pointing the problems there just down to the left. I'm pointing towards it, so I'm already externalizing it. I'm not pointing to the person, never point at the person, point at the problem. So people are, briefed on how to go about doing this if they want to use it, because then, they can have the bubble session, and afterwards they can have the discussion, and afterwards they can carry on with their hypnosis, their CBT, or whatever it is. So it's almost like a vessel in its own right that you can wheel in, step into the bubble, and step back out.
It was interesting watching it, because how it might look to the untrained eye, or someone seeing, humour works for the first time. They might not get really actually the subtlety of what's going on beneath that, and there was a lot of you could argue and you could break it down and say, well, look, Phil was very good at non-verbally separating out the issue from the person's identity.
Yes, of course.
But it can just look like there's madness.
Yeah, well, exactly. Obviously, the workshop was a fusion of some, the bubble sessions, the what I used to call thought-provoking dialogue, and then there was obviously the clowning stuff that we did as well, the sacred clowning piece that we did, and various other things. So that was designed for that day, because we were making a film, this documentary about the use of humour in creativity and problem solving. So yeah, we when I'm obviously teaching, we can I can deconstruct everything what I do. And what I normally do if I'm teaching, I use what I call microteaching, which basically means we film a session, then we all sit round afterwards and we watch the session, and the only rule is to say stop. So if one of the students or the people say, right, what were you doing there? What was your meaning behind that? I will explain in great detail what I was doing at that point. And I've always been able to do that because everything that comes out of my mouth is almost scanned and fast-tracked in my brain. So I'm saying something for a reason. I'm not just doing or messing around, As you probably saw, there was a lot of intuition going on there, and then all of a sudden, I'm on the case, as it were, shaking things up and, using. I think in that last session we used some props, some masks, which was, quite appropriate for the presentation. So, but I actually know what I'm doing, and I can break it down, for teaching purposes, because I need to, because people say, what the hell was going on there? And even Frank Farrelly used to say to me, the old professor, father of provocative therapy, said, the trouble is with you, you're too fast. And I go, so fast, Frank, I'm not too fast. You've just got slower as you've got older. And of course that would rouse him up, and he'd threaten to punch me, but I was a little bit quicker in those days. I could move out of his way. So. Joking, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
If you were doing, if someone went and saw, an NLP practitioner, one of the first things that might happen is they might do some goal setting and, create a smart outcome of where it was going. But it doesn't seem, certainly within the bubble of possibility, it seemed to unfold.
Well, it does. You're working purely on what's presented. Obviously, if I'm working in my clinical practice, I know the people. I've done the usual clinical history. Have you had blood tests done? What's your diagnosis? Are you involved with a psychiatrist? Are you seeing the GP? I've already done all that, And sometimes if somebody comes in with a flying phobia, I wouldn't even use a bubble session. I'd use one of the other tools in the extensive toolbox, But when you're actually doing the bubble, it is live. You're not going in there. I remember when I started out doing CBT when I was a baby back in the midst of time, and I thought, I've got to sit with this person. Goodness gracious me, there's an hour. What am I going to say? So I'd make sure I'd have a pile of papers next to me, filling in forms, various little exercises, CBT exercises, because I thought, I'm going to dry up. Well, it's things have changed since those days, but it requires a lot of practice. As I say to people, you've what you put in is what you get out as well. Because people say, well, where do you come up with all these facts and all this research? Especially the stuff that I'm not making up, because I do make up research in sessions. Research shows. But I read. I read every day for about 2 hours. I love reading, and it's always about neuroscience or quantum physics or mind-body stuff, So I love what I do, and sometimes, I suppose with any of this type of work, I think you've got to be committed. When I worked in psychiatry, some of my colleagues would say, you're going to go on this course this weekend, you're going to pay for it yourself, and then you're going to come back into work on Monday morning, and then deliver what because I'm fully committed. I love what I do. It's not a job. I don't want to sound all wishy-washy, but it is a calling. This is what I do. This is, as Viktor Frankl, the great psychiatrist, used to ask his patients, what's the meaning in your life? And if patients couldn't come up with meaning, and this is a question I ask the people I work with, then he'd be a bit more worried. It doesn't matter what the meaning is, whether you're filling the bags out the back of an Oxfam shop, climbing Mount Everest. It's so important to have meaning. My meaning is doing what I do. I just love doing it.
It's really amazing, and it's nice that you have so much passion for it.
Certainly, even in my 10 years now, I'm still at it.
I saw you. You can't be more than 25.
27 actually. I was 27.
See.
But there we go. Yeah, the years haven't been kind to me, as you say.
Well, look, as you know, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is getting this idea that rapid change can
Yeah,
happen. I
yeah,
think there are a number of people out there, or a number of sort of thinking about culturally around change, which is people still
hmm,
think that change has to take a long time. It's got to be
yeah,
about deep analysis, understanding why you have a problem will make it somehow
mm,
magically go away. Given
yeah,
your years of experience of doing this, and the number of different fields that you've been
yeah.
exposed to, what's your take on all of those sorts of things?
Um, yeah, I think it's back to conditioning because we're conditioned to thinking, well, rapid change, there's no gain without pain, and we're conditioned into this. And it's the same in psychiatry and psychotherapy. It takes years, and the psychodynamic crowd, going over the same things. My childhood was wasn't very brilliant in terms of my illness. Why would I want to sit there and go over it again when it was bad enough the first time round? But I've certainly seen lots of examples where people change. Sometimes, I remember one session I was doing a bubble session, and a guy had had a horrendous time, divorce and stuff, and really, at one stage he was, commit suicide. And it was in the session I started mimicking like a puppet. I was doing the puppet dance, and I said, "That's you. That is, puppet." And then all of a sudden, I said, "Look at this! Great big scissors comes across, clip, 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 clip." I think there was about 5 strings as I saw it, Then all of a sudden, I said, "The puppet is loose." Bang! That was it. It was that one line of "the puppet is loose" really resonated with him. But I think it was the little puppet dance I was doing, and he said, "Yeah, that is me. I am like a puppet, and everybody's pulling my strings." But he said, when you did that, he said, bang. So he said something went off in my head. It was almost like an explosion in his head. He said, "I felt so different," and he said, "The puppet's loose." We did some subsequent sessions, and he had that almost like on his T-shirt. "The puppet is loose." He was proud of it. So that was just an instant. The another one that comes to mind, working in a very serious setting where somebody's going to commit suicide. I had the surrounds of a psychiatric hospital. I'd sectioned this person a couple of times under the Mental Health Act, so I knew the person very well. And so she comes up saying, I'm going to kill myself and all the rest of it. And I said, okay. So I look at my diary, and I said, when are you thinking of doing it? She said, well, why do you need to know? I said, well, my diary is absolutely full, which was true, by the way. And I said, if you kill yourself, then I can slot somebody else in that, that time slot. She went, "You uncaring bleep, bleep, bleep," And I said, well, I've got a job to do as well, and it's tough going, and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, it was like this smile on her face.
Mm-hmm.
And she went, I know what you're up to. She said, "You're doing this reverse psychology stuff on me and all that." But that was the turning point. That was the turning point. To this day, I know that she's not been back to a psychiatric hospital. That was a turning point. So it was trusting. Some might say, all right, I had psychiatric apparatus around me, and worst case, but I wouldn't have played around with somebody's life like that, because I knew that she needed to know that. She needed to know that there's other realities out there, and people do, people care as well, and that was I wouldn't, when I'm teaching people, I don't recommend people to do that sort of stuff. That's years of experience and having a good understanding of psychiatric systems as well, which is one of the courses that I teach to counsellors, therapists, life coaches as well. Because obviously it's sad to say that mental ill health is on the rise. Because of the do you remember I said, we take in more information in a single day than our great-grandparents did in an entire lifetime. So we're absolutely bombarded. This is an ancient brain, we haven't long walked out of the cave. We've got all this masses of information, hence we're seeing more anxiety and depression and other, presentations as well.
just another theme that I wanted to kind of explore with you was, typically the therapeutic model often focuses around, establishing a connection or establishing a level of rapport with the client. How does that fit in with, working sort of teasingly, provocatively with someone? Could someone argue, well, hang on, aren't you damaging rapport?
No, because I think you've got to feel secure in yourself, I think. What I mean is, I don't think you have to be on the couch 10 years yourself and, go into some sort of analytical setup. Nothing wrong with that, of course. But you've got to feel, you've got to believe in what you're doing. And I'm sure, and again, if we look at bits of neuroscience, mirror neurons, if you sit next to somebody who's in pain, then your, pain receptors switch on in your brain. We call that, empathy. So there's a neuroscientific basis for empathy. But we need to know about that. How many people do I know that got burned out, doing client work because they, it was almost like they felt the the client's pain too much. So you have to, feel, centered in yourself. You've got to know when to. It's almost like a graphic equalizer where you slide in, then you slide back out sometimes. Otherwise, I think in doing this kind of work sometimes you can get seriously damaged yourself if you're not aware of what you're doing. And I think even some experienced clinicians are not aware of that, When I talk to some of my psychiatric colleagues, they say, well, you're talking a different language. I've always found that strange because I think it's getting better these days, but many years ago, you never went into neuroscience. You never went into the brain in great detail. It was you get the diagnosis and the medical model provided the rest, with the right kind of pharmacy, with the odd little bit of, therapy on the side sort of thing. So I think you've got to, feel, I don't want to use the word confident, but you've got to be competent with what you're doing and believe in what you're doing. And I'm sure that connects. Because then when I look at somebody and they look into my eyes, they know I mean business. I'm on their side. I want what's best for them. But I ain't going to take any nonsense either. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to, I'm the coach. I want the gold medal. And as we know, there's a fine line between brilliant coaches and somebody that's average.
Well, I've talked before with people on these podcasts around a phrase, and I don't know whether I coined it or it's just come out somewhere else, but the battle of the Trons, which is some people kind of come in and they, if you're not careful as a therapist, they're already taking their problems so seriously that you can kind of go, oh God, well, other ones I could help, but this one is really screwed. Oh no.
Well, exactly. We're in and out of trance states all the time, are we not? I remember when I was working in psychiatry, I saw this woman, and it was absolutely horrendous. I hadn't been working there long, and I thought, oh my God, I'm really worried about this woman because she poured it all out, almost like, sucked me dry sort of thing, like an emotional vacuum cleaner. And I thought, oh my God, so I'll see you next week, and I'm really worried and all this. I thought, I need to go up the road and get a sandwich. So I went up to this little shopping centre outside Birmingham. And there she was with a friend, laughing and joking. I didn't approach her, and I thought, what? I've just seen it. She'd obviously brought that stuff in for me to see. She'd unpacked it, but she had other elements of her life as well, and it is about trances that we go into. Have you ever, been in a situation where somebody's phoned in sick for work, right? And they might have, they might have broken their foot, but then all of a sudden the voice changes. Hello, it's Phil. I won't be coming in today. Because I broke my foot. They're like saying, "Is there something wrong with your voice, Phil?" No, actually, no. It's my foot. Well, why are you talking like that then? So, and you might have seen a bit of that in the bubble session when I get people to change their voices or change their state by operating out of a different emotion. So if somebody's there and they're depressed and they've got to use a bubbly voice, goodness gracious me, you see the change. Because they know we play in this game called the molecules of emotion, where we shake all up the emotions in a box, and when they pull them out, they have to act out of it. I'm doing it, and then the client's doing it. So we take turns. We might do 3 or 4 in 20 minutes. And it's amazing the shift when they're almost like forced, in a way, to speak out of a different tonality of voice, which goes against, the grain of what they've actually presented with. So it's a game for all the family, the molecules of emotion, and it should be out this Christmas, actually. So.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be available in all good bookshops.
Yes.
Or good game shops, I should say.
Good game shops, yes, yes. Well, and bookshops, Howard, to be honest.
And bookshops, yeah. In fact, everywhere. It's going to be available everywhere.
Yes, yes. And if that's not true, it should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there any, what I would say, if someone wants to get good at creating change, from your experience, how should they go about it? What should they be looking at, reading, doing? How would you go about it? What advice would you give?
I would say, obviously, look at now that there's fantastic resources in terms of neuroscience and linked with creativity specifically. I can't just name one book. There's absolutely shed loads of books on the subject. I think that's a good starting point. Get a good introduction to neuroscience. Once again, there's some great online courses. There's great literature out there. And understanding what's going on in the meat machine. When you start to understand the meat machine is like a ramshackled old house, and many rooms have been added through our evolution, then you know that one room is not communicating with another room. And when you know that, there's almost, when you tell people this as well, or people understand this, there's almost a smile on the face and go, all right, that makes sense then. There's, if we're using a metaphor of the chimp, for the amygdala, the emotional manager in the brain, then we say, yeah, your chimp's operating out of a different time, savannah time, really. So you have to start a new kind of dialogue, with your chimp. Just don't do that in public, or around other psychotherapists. Otherwise, they'll be suspecting something else is going on. So it's getting a good understanding. Like I said, there's so much out there now on neuroscience of creativity, and there has been for a long time, but obviously it's also at the forefront now. There's even neuromarketing, which is where, I do a lot of work for corporate companies, and they're really interested in the neuroscience of how the brain works and how can they sell more stuff to people. So you walk into a store and you see a pile of, Rolex watches. I can't afford a Rolex, but there's a watch there. It's 200 quid. All right, I'm having that. So already your dopamine buttons have been pressed. So you will, undergo a little bit of cognitive dissonance in your brain and justify why you're not going to have the Rolex. You've never really liked Rolex anyway, but you're having that other watch there, that 200 quid watch. They press your buttons, It's like somebody that goes outside for a fag, in work, they release in more dopamine and other pleasure chemicals than actually smoking the thing, So they've been conditioned there once again. So beginning to understand this, you start to get this aha moment yourself and go, all right, yeah, I can bring about some change as well. And the change can be accelerated, by using humor, having fun, shaking things up a little bit, What was it Einstein said? Creativity is intelligence, having fun. I like that.
Well, listen, is there anything that we, when I said let's talk about rapid change and invited you to do the podcast, was there anything that you thought would come up about rapid change, or things that have sort of been milling around in your frenetic mind that would be good to talk about?
I think preparation is everything, and also repetition in terms of if you are the whatever you're calling yourself, the coach, the clinician, the therapist, the counsellor, you've got to put the work in, I think, as well. I think there's been lots of courses out there. I love NLP, trained in NLP years ago, but then do NLP in a week and stuff, and a lot of people bought into that. I was never convinced of that. I think, it gave you a grounding, but then to go out there and, let yourself loose on somebody's brain using this stuff when other things could, be popping up, then I think you have to do your research and feel, comfortable in your own skin when you're doing this stuff, but also believe that something is going to happen. I always believe something is going to happen in a session, and I'm never satisfied if nothing happens. Sometimes I'm not satisfied, then I hear a week later something's happened. That's what I call the time release capsule that goes off in somebody's brain, when they get that eureka moment, sometimes a week later, usually at the checkout of one of the major supermarkets, and that's a sight to behold, So it's all about, I think you've got to, with rapid change, you've got to do your apprenticeship. My apprenticeship, I'm in my 62nd year at the moment, but I'm still an apprentice. I'm still, developing systems. I don't sit on my laurels. I've done a degree and I've done a couple of courses and that's it. I think we've got to. You've got to put yourself in the mind gym. You've got to be pumping iron, in your own mind gym, and every day. I believe. Some people might agree with that. Some people might disagree. I might be right. I might be wrong. But I think you've got to continually update yourself. And all the neuroscience is pointing to that about what is updating ourselves every day. I'm not thinking, well, I do the crossword every day, I'm never going to get a dementia-type illness. Well, they're actually saying you need to vary it a bit more than just doing the crossword, because your brain actually gets used to doing the crossword, and then it will go back into the efficiency program. So you're not really pushing your own boundaries. You're not forging new pathways. So if you see a nice, smooth pavement, and then the opposite side of the street, a part of the old town, there's cobbles, go walk on the cobbles, because your brain has to adjust for you going off-road when you walk on the cobbles. So it's constantly about updating oneself, and then you can really feel good about bringing, rapid change around in people's lives, and then making yourself redundant and then moving on to the next person or persons.
Yeah.
As opposed to being conditioned in, you've got to be on the couch for 10 years. As far as I know, there's never been any research between long-term or short-term therapy. Sometimes it's about the relationship of the person delivering the stuff. Again, there is some research on that.
Listen, if people are listening to the podcast and they're keen to hear more from you and want to hear more about HumourWorks and all the stuff that you do in terms of helping people with change, how can they get in touch with you? Where should they go?
Well, there's the website, even the website, of course, which is for people wearing flippers. The website is HumourWorks.com. HumourWorks is spelt with a lovely X on the end.
We will put the link on the on the website, rapidchange.works, and again on the information under iTunes as well, and on Stitcher, so it'll all be there, so people should be able to find you.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to ring up and have a chat direct, I haven't got a problem with that at all. I'll speak to anybody.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Phil. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you and getting a flavour of some of the stuff that you do and your way of approaching stuff.
I hope so, Howard. I hope so. The work's ongoing, but it's a wonderful thing, and it's about the serious use of humour. But we must explain that to the people that we're working with. Then it's usually the client, the patient gets it. Sometimes I do struggle teaching some of the more ingrained psychotherapists as well, but there's always hope. There's always hope.
There's always hope, and what a wonderful way to note to leave the podcast on. That there is always hope. You heard it here first.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, why not share it with anyone you think might be interested, and even head over to iTunes to give us a glowing review. You'll find more about what's coming up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/rapidchangeworks. And of course, you'll find all the links related to this episode, plus those free 5 steps to getting your suggestions to sizzle over at rapidchange.works.